And here we are, a very special episode of the Awesemo Live Before Lock Monday Night Countdown. Contest slate so big, he's breaking his streak. We are joined by the one and only boss man himself, Alex Awesemo Baker. And then you get your old pal EMac and Kyle Dvorchak, who's already talked about this slate once and written an article. He's ahead of me. I've only written an article, but we're ready to go. Alex, thank you for joining our happy little duo here.
Yeah, man. It's been way too long to have not done a show with my old pal. So I'm really excited. And we got a great game tonight. There's ridiculous prizes to be won. And Showdown's always a lot of fun because there's so much strategy that goes into it, given there's only two teams.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing. Tonight you're going to see, arguably, do we say game of the year, game of the decade? I mean, technically the Super Bowl was already in 2020, but come on, this is going to be an amazing game. Sorry, I had too many tabs open, and NFL.com starts playing clips for you randomly. I'm not a fan of that. But we'll get that out of there. But yeah, so we've got an exciting one. The only game I can think of that was perhaps more exciting was involving the Chiefs and the Rams, and I think that was a game that at that point in the year, and they ended up scoring, 100 or 101 points. I think they had 7 different players in that game had multi-touchdown games to that point in the season. So this is almost as good as that, but I don't know that anything will ever top that. But we're going to get in here. We're going to start talking about the good stuff. We are, of course, brought to you by No House Advantage. We'll talk about them in a bit. And we'll also talk about the amazing deal we have for our NFL Express package, our weekly Express package. I'm just actually going to hit that one right now real quick because you can jump in on that. No promo code. This is the deal now. $3.95 a week gets you all of our premium Showdown content. That was something that Alex wanted to add to this, felt like the package was a little light. And he said, you know what? I designed this. I'm using your words, Alex, so you let me know if I'm wrong. I designed this in mind for someone to play 2, 3, 4 times a week for fantasy sports. I want to give them a fighting chance. They'll get a nice player pool. And he said, you know what? These Showdown contests are so big. Those are three nights a week here. We got Sunday night, Monday night, and Thursday night. Why not give the people what they really want? And we'll give them direct player projections. We will give them ownership projections and the boom bust version. What do we call that for this one? The percentages of being the top 6, the successful 6, and the fabulous 5. Is that what we're going with here, Alex?
That's a lot better than what I came up with, which is just top Showdown plays. So pretty generic. But the successful 6, man, that's sick. But as you're saying, yeah, if you don't have membership, it's $3.95 a week. So that'll give you all the tools for tonight's slate, and I think tonight's where all the big money is. So I'm excited to get some winners in the audience here.
All right, absolutely. So while you guys are coming on in, hit that like button. We do appreciate it. Of course, you can follow all of us on Twitter. You can see our handles below, and we do have the Awesemo_COM handle that's running a giveaway tonight. You want to go check that out. It's on Twitter, Awesemo_COM, and then we, of course, have Awesemo NFL. Notable and active tonight, nothing too crazy. We have Ricky Seals-Jones on offense for the Chiefs will be inactive. And then let me see, Justice Hill was the only other real sort of contributor there. So that does mean that Sammy Watkins is in, Byron Pringle is in, the host of guys that were like, are they going to sit them? They may be sitting on the bench, but they will be in uniform and eligible to play tonight. So we'll talk about that. But we're going to get into the meat of this right now. Let's talk Kansas City. We're going to, you guys want to hear the analysis from Alex, of course, but got to set him up here. So we have our game. We have Kansas City at the Ravens. No fans in the stands. The Ravens are favored by 3.5. We have a 45.5 over/under that gives Kansas City a 25.5 implied point total here. It feels like we have seen Pat Mahomes on more primetime slates than not, which is pretty crazy to think about it. And it's close. It's almost there. It's not quite half of his games, but when you start throwing in the playoffs, it gets close. So it feels like he's always going to be on. So he's someone who is exciting. The Ravens this year have kept Baker Mayfield and Deshaun Watson in check so far, allowing just 464 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. But I do want to point out this will be the 3rd time in his career in the regular season that Pat Mahomes is playing against Baltimore in his first year as a starter. He was 35 for 53, 377 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. And then last year in week 3, 27 of 37 for 374 yards and 3 touchdowns. I guess we can say matchup proof is a word, but just showing you what he can get done when he needs to. And tonight will be a time that he needs to. Alex, you are the guest of honor. The site is named after you. These are your projections. Where is Patrick Mahomes for you, ranked up against Lamar Jackson? That's the question on everybody's mind tonight.
Well, Patrick Mahomes and Lamar are two of the top fantasy players in the league. I think this matchup is a downgrade for both teams because you put two good offenses up against each other, and there can only be one on the field at a time. So I'm expecting both teams to be a little bit worse than your average week. Mahomes, I think he's interesting in Showdown because he doesn't get a ton of points on the ground, which is a big contrast to Lamar Jackson, and that's going to affect how I use him a lot. Lamar, I feel really confident, even if I don't have a pass catcher, because he just has so much rushing upside. Mahomes is going to be much more lineup dependent for me because he gets there because Tyreek and Travis Kelce have big days. So I'm planning my lineups around Mahomes when I have him, but that's not true with Lamar Jackson.
All right. The next question, Kyle, we're going to hand this one over to you. I know you're excited about CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Pretty good thus far, but is he truly going to be a bell cow? And how do you want to approach this? Because can we capture all of the Kansas City running game and some backfield targets, particularly on DraftKings? That full point PPR could have him being a difference maker for us.
Yeah, you're going to see pretty much the entirety or a lot of the game in terms of the Kansas City side be run through Clyde Edwards-Helaire in terms of how they distribute their backfield touches, even as a receiver, which he's noted to be, but he didn't show off a ton in week 1. 51 snaps to, I believe, 21 receiving snaps versus Darrell Williams. Williams also entered the night with a bit of a hamstring or maybe an ankle injury, I believe, that actually kept him out a little bit last week. So given the injury and given that we've mostly seen Clyde Edwards-Helaire be the guy both on the receiving snaps, and that's what he did in college, and between the tackles, and in week 1, man, that goal line roll, although he only finds 1 touchdown, he's a guy who has multi-touchdown upside without a doubt. And he makes an interesting move at captain specifically because he doesn't have to, for Patrick Mahomes specifically, his touchdowns probably elevate Tyreek Hill ahead of him in the captain spot. Whereas, we talk about this a lot on Showdown slates. The running backs typically, although we could see some Clyde Edwards-Helaire receiving production, the running backs typically, if they're getting there, they don't necessarily have to correlate with anyone else specifically. So I really like Clyde Edwards-Helaire in captain. I think he's the only back that I'm really excited about. On the other side, it's definitely contrarian to look at any real captain plays because they are splitting their backfield so much in Baltimore. CH, I think, will be fairly dominant in terms of the backfield share, both targets and carries he sees tonight.
All right. Turning it back to you, Alex, when you're looking at the captain spot here, when you have someone like CH, I mean, he conceivably could have just as much, if not more, production than all of the other running backs in this game combined on both sides. How does that factor into what you're doing? On DraftKings pricing has been phenomenal for this game. You've got to make some really difficult choices, and you're not going to be happy with your lineups. Perfect. FanDuel, it's a little different because you don't have to pay that 50% premium to put somebody in your captain slot. However, that's when game theory really, really comes into play because with the MVP designation over there, you get the increased scoring. How does this impact you? Because everybody's going to want to say, well, if I'm already playing Lamar Jackson, I should put him in the captain, right? I don't think the answer is just jam him in there. How do you approach the leverage utilizing Clyde as an example here?
Yeah, I think there's always leverage for the reason Kyle mentioned that they don't share the points. And I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire as an 11% chance of being the top scoring player on DraftKings, only 10% ownership. So I think there's leverage. And not only are there better odds in the ownership, but he's way, way cheaper than other main cogs in the lineup tonight. So I think he makes a terrific captain play, and I have him a lot. Lamar, as he said, he could have a big game and not be, he could even be the highest scoring player and not be the captain, the optimal, because he is 13K at DraftKings. On FanDuel, that's not really a consideration, as you mentioned. So on FanDuel, we'll have a lot of Lamar and Mahomes, try to mix it up in the flex. On DraftKings, I think Lamar is solid in pretty much any lineup. I think I have him in almost every lineup.
Okay, excellent. One thing I do want to point out here is we've got almost 1,100 people watching, actually over 1,100 people. Let's get those likes up. That helps improve our prognostication skills, and it also limits the number of promotions that I will be compelled to do. But I do want to mention our sponsor tonight, No House Advantage. This is what is called a peer-to-peer gaming site. What that is it's player props. Okay, we all know what that is, but you're going against the house. Well, at No House Advantage, it's just that. The house does not have an advantage. We're not playing against them. We are playing in contests just like we're used to on the other DFS sites, head-to-heads, 50-50s, GPPs, etc. But we're playing against the answers that are given by other gamers, just as ourselves. How this works is you can choose from between 60 and 70 questions for each of their featured games or contests, and these are player props. Sometimes they'll mix it up and they'll say, LeBron James points plus assists is 32. You're going to take the over or under. NFL has plenty of props in and of itself. You pick 5 and you rank them with confidence: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you feel like something is obvious, though, so does everybody else. Perhaps that's the time that you don't want to put 5 on that one. Maybe you leave it out if you're daring, or you lower it down your list if you're feeling a little conservative. But there is definitely an edge to be had, and we do offer projections here for each of their props. And what we do is we have a measure of success next to each of them. So you don't have to do the heavy lifting. You don't have to go look at a bunch of lines and run this against a bunch of projection sites. We've got it all there for you. There's definitely, again, as I said, an edge, and there is some overlay. So you'll want to check that out. If you use the promo code Awesemo, they will match you up to your first $20 in site currency. All right, Kyle, the wide receivers, let's count Kelce as a wide receiver, because basically that's what he is. He sort of masquerades as one. Absolutely phenomenal. For me, it's Kelce, then it's Tyreek Hill, then it's close my eyes and pick. We need more scientific assessment than that. What would you like to impart on our viewers?
So I agree. I would prefer Kelce than Hill, although I really think both of those guys are pretty much in the same boat, where Tyreek Hill is going to get more air yards. He's going to generally be going deeper down the field. That gives him more upside on a single play basis. But on the other hand, it's reasonable to project that Travis Kelce sees more targets. I don't think either one has a massive advantage. Right now, I would just point out that we have Travis Kelce with a bit higher ownership at the captain spot. So maybe you just simply play the ownership game, given that I don't think either one of them is like a vastly better player or projection at their relatively similar prices. Travis Kelce at 10, Tyreek Hill at 9.2. So I don't think either one of those players, don't sweat over that decision. I think there are more macro decisions you should be looking to make on the slate to actually, build your advantage. Beyond them, Sammy Watkins, he was dinged up in week 2. I believe it's a concussion, but he's cleared to play, obviously. Before that, he led the team with 9 targets in week 1. We've seen dating back to their playoff run that he was playing on 60 to 70% of their snaps in almost every single game. I think since week 8, he's played on less than about 65 or 70% of the snaps just twice since week 8 of last year. Basically came back from that injury, got healthy, and was just entirely their number 2 receiver. So I think his price right now at 5K is actually very palatable. I don't mind going even up to him at captain in a small percentage of your lineups. It might sound crazy, but there are so many good plays on this slate that you could feasibly see Sammy Watkins catching a touchdown or 2, being the optimal captain, because it lets you get Lamar, Patrick, and one other guy at Clyde or somebody else in your lineup. So I don't hate him. Beyond him, I would say I'm going to go with Demarcus Robinson over Mecole Hardman. Hardman essentially just kind of plays this gadget role, I would say, whereas Robinson is probably the more likely player to be the number 3 receiver. And just generally, I'm not sure I'm looking for that style of player that Hardman is. Let me see where our ownership is actually lower on Hardman, though. So maybe you pivot to Hardman in terms of the largest fields, and we have some large fields tonight.
All right, Alex, we've got a bundle of players here. As Kyle sort of pointed out, Sammy Watkins, his availability directly impacts Mecole Hardman. We saw his snap counts go up pretty dramatically, 29% in week 1, 65% in week 2 after Watkins went down. Just be careful on that one. That's one of those where, for every reason that Kyle mentioned, for Hardman. The other guy I do want to point out, the first ever guy that I said is we are better off just going and buying a lottery ticket. In my lottery ticket section for my article, Alex, was Byron Pringle. We all remember the game he had, around 100 yards, I think 6 catches and a touchdown. Broke the slate. He was like $200 or something like that. Can lightning strike again? He's had many opportunities since then on primetime games, as I mentioned, because Kansas City is on all the time. But what do you want to do here from this plethora of putridity?
Yeah, I think Byron Pringle, millionaire maker only, but when half the prize pool is going to first and there's 250,000 entries, you got to start considering Byron Pringle. McCole Hardman and Demarcus Robinson are decent options. In week one, when Watkins was healthy, Hardman played 34% of snaps. Demarcus Robinson, I guess I should say, ran routes on 34. Demarcus Robinson ran routes on 49. They both got an uptick in usage last week because Watkins got injured. So my play, I'm thinking maybe I'll go back to Watkins because if people are just box score watching from last week, they might not realize that he missed some of the game due to injury. But really, the dart throw on this team I'm really interested in is Darrell Williams. He didn't play much last week, but he was also injured. Darwin Thompson came in and played some snaps. I'm just assuming that was because of injury. And Darrell Williams, week one, he ran a good amount of routes. He was out there on passing routes, 11 plays. He saw some rushing attempts. And I think that's a good differentiation play tonight with Darrell Williams, where Darwin Thompson is someone I'm avoiding because I don't think he sees the field.
All right. And then defense here. So far this year, the Ravens have given up half a dozen sacks and 1 turnover. Last year, the Chiefs got to Jackson in this matchup 3 times, but got no turnovers. And then in 2018, they got 1 takeaway and no sacks. The reason I'm pointing this out is on DraftKings, we can lose up to 4 points. That's where it caps for points allowed. This is going to be a high scoring game. So basically you need a combination of about 2.5 sacks and turnovers combined to get you back to neutral. And then you need more. Well, we're already seeing that we may not even get back to neutral. At that point, you're hoping for a special teams touchdown, which we know is going to happen, about every 4 games. And that's being generous for all teams combined. On to the quarterbacks here. So this is where I do want to say I have to be willing to pay the premium for Lamar Jackson. Kyle, maybe you can talk some sense into me, but last year led the league with 36 touchdown passes. Okay, that's pretty good. It wasn't, he's no Pat Mahomes, right? He's no Tom Brady. But then he also had an NFL quarterback record, 1,206 yards, which was more, his per game average was more than the Jets and the Dolphins total team average. Absolutely phenomenal. Talk me out of Lamar Jackson.
No, I mean, I cannot talk you off this ledge. I am going to be essentially lock buttoning Lamar in either, getting him in either captain and I'm fine with being over the field on captain too. Because when you look at our projections for him, you look at that, top showdown plays tool, kind of reminds me of Alvin Kamara was last night where, yeah, the ownership was going to be high, but it is just a complete smash spot for him. The owner, I don't think people really realize just how much of a lock button Alvin Kamara was. Obviously, hindsight, I can easily say that. But my lineups also said that that's where I was putting my money. I'm going to do the same thing with Lamar Jackson because, you said it all. I'm the single best rushing quarterback in the history of the NFL. Fantasy points per game, most in the history of the NFL as well, I believe, last year. Because you have to kind of adjust for per game because he didn't even have to play week 17 because he was so good. And I thought this was funny. I was looking at his top percentage for not only top percentage, but 2 through 6 basically makes the optimal lineup, but not as the captain. And I was like, 2 through 6, he's only a little over half. That's because you should be jamming in with the captain. He very frequently is the top play captain, even when you adjust for his price. And even when you adjust for his price, the field seems to be a little bit lower on him than they should be. So I'm going to be all over Jackson. And that probably has me slightly under the field on Mahomes because it is difficult and probably going to be kind of popular to get up to both of these guys in some capacity. So no, I don't think you need to, just because of the ownership, instant lock like a fade on Jackson. I'd rather just get over the field, even if that doesn't give me a ton of leverage. I think he's just that good of a play.
All right, Alex, we know there's all sorts of superlatives. We just threw a bunch of them out there talking about Jackson. What I want you to kind of help the people understand is how do you, and Kyle hit on it a little bit, but how do you fade Jackson? But what is the benefit of your fade just being him in the utility spot from more of a mathematical perspective on DraftKings where it's that 50% premium?
Well, if you're putting him in the utility slot, I think that you should make sure you're spending most of your salary cap. because the way you get there is just like he gets a good amount of points, but the scoring is distributed enough that you can't fit him at captain. So I know a lot of people in large field tournaments like to leave salary on the table in these short slates. That's not the way I would do it personally. So I think I think Jackson's he's almost a lock button play, as Kyle was saying. And then I'm going to try to differentiate in other spots because with the quarterbacks, they just put up a steady stream of points. If he gets his 60 yards running and 225 passing, like I'm projecting, I mean, then you have like 13 points already. So if you get, I mean, it's just hard for him to really like not put up a decent score.
All right. We're doing nice on time here. I do have some people asking about some groups. So that's something that's quite popular to do here, especially if you're utilizing optimizers. Most of them will allow you to do this. This was a unique one for me. I went a little bit differently than I typically do. I set up my no more than I like to combine the kickers and defense and just say no more than 2. You can almost just take defenses out of this one. I've limited myself to like 5% of each defense. I just don't see them scoring. I don't think it's worth it. So that's kind of how I'm manually tweaking that. And then I'm only going to take one kicker, essentially. I did not force in any pass catchers with my quarterbacks. That's something I almost always do if they are going to be the captain. I did not tonight, but I'm hand building, meaning I'm seeing where my percentages are, and then I'm saying, like right now I'm making Lamar as captain, or pardon me, Boykin as captain. I want a Lamar. Andrews as captain. I want a Lamar, but I'm not putting the constraints on it, because when I was doing that earlier, I was leaving salary on the table, Alex, because it was, I don't like to set that use a minimum amount of salary, but as you were saying, I was leaving too much on the table. I didn't like the builds of that. Is there anything in particular that you want to do? I mean, one of the tight ends for Baltimore, one of the running backs for Baltimore, I would say one of the running backs for the Chiefs personally, is just kind of where I'm landing. And then one wide receiver for Kansas City, not including Tyreek or Kelsey. Those were basically the 4 rules I had. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that the rules tonight might be a little trickier because of how expensive everyone is. But like a general rule would be, if you have Kelsey and Hill, like then you would want Mahomes as your captain probably, or if you have Mahomes at captain, you definitely want like Hill or Kelsey in the flex. And probably another pass catcher as well. So I think when you're hand building, you get a general sense of how much correlation there is in your lineup. And with Mahomes, since he's going to get there passing a ton, make sure if you're playing him, you get the pass catchers in there.
All right. Kyle, back to you here, still lineup construction. Talk a little bit about 4-2s and 5-1s. And how you can approach that, and how anything might be weird tonight just because of so much production coming through on the signal callers here.
Yeah, so we've seen essentially 4-2 last year, at least last year specifically, 4-2s and 5-1s. This was Nolan Kelly's work. Actually, I used a lot of that in my own showdown content. Is that 4-2 and 5-1s hit at a pretty reasonable rate relative to what the field does. Essentially, 3-3 was most popular, or it was most common among winning lineups. But my assumption is that it's also most popular. And on this slate, I do think, especially on a side like the Chiefs, where they could spread it out a decent amount and they could also win, that's probably the side I would more so be looking to, like 5-1. And the other side actually, I think, has great single options. Like Lamar Jackson's a guy who I think makes actually a decent amount of sense as the 1 in a 5-1, because he can be at least so independent of his entire offense. He can rush for 100 yards and the offense not even play great, or he can just throw 1 touchdown to Marquise Brown. That might not be enough at Marquise Brown's salary. And on the other side, we've seen this, and maybe that's why I'm saying that I think 3-3s are going to be a bit common, is because this season we saw 1-5, which only happened, I believe, once last year, or maybe twice, depending on what contest you were playing. There was like a few slates that were like 50-50. But we saw it 1-5. I forget which game it was recently, like the past week. 1-5 hit, 2-4s hit a few times. So I would just try and get unique and stay on the polls, as opposed to, I would imagine, 3-3 makes sense in theory. Both teams are going to score a lot of points, but it's just going to be the chalk construction. And even to extent, I would say 4-2 is probably fairly chalky as well. So I'd rather go onslaught or maybe contrarian 2-4, especially on a slate where there are so many people playing tonight. Being contrarian is just like a must, if you don't want to chop whatever you end up winning.
All right. Do you want to hit on us here, and then we'll head back to Alex? Do you want to hit on the Baltimore running back, the absolute plethora of options? It doesn't appear to be J.K. Dobbins as the lead guy like we thought in week 1, but I don't know who to turn to here.
Yeah, it's kind of a mess. We're seeing, we saw J.K. Dobbins week 1, got a handful of carries inside the 5, scored twice. Then Mark Ingram kind of comes back last week. And also, it's difficult to really say, and I think Mark Ingram is somewhere around 16 or 19 carries, and Gus Edwards sitting just below him. But it's really difficult to say that what we've seen through 2 weeks has almost any application to what we're going to see tonight, because the Ravens have, I believe, won by a collective score of 49 points. They killed the Browns and cleaned up work against Houston handily. Lamar Jackson has only passed 17 times in the entire second half of both games. So we've seen a lot of Gus Edwards, but we've also seen a lot of mop-up duty. And we saw in week 1 that was not necessarily what we saw in week 2. I would say Mark Ingram between the tackles. J.K. Dobbins, I believe, leads the team in receiving routes or in receiving snaps out of the backfield. So maybe he's a guy that if you expect, or if you want to go Jackson heavy, which I do, or if you expect Jackson, the Ravens to be losing a lot, he's a guy you could see the field more. He got passes at Ohio State, who's really a 3-down back at Ohio State. So I would say he probably makes the most sense as a receiver out of the backfield, although Mark Ingram didn't catch a ton of passes last year. I think it was in the ballpark of 30, scored 5 times, and was one of the league leaders in a touchdown percentage out of the backfield, in terms of as his receiving production went 5 touchdowns on somewhere around 30 receptions. So I would say those two guys both have some receiving potential. I would lean Dobbins personally, though. And I think the ownership is going to maybe twist the other way just a little bit. Gus Edwards makes some sense as a guy who could get in, especially if you expect the Ravens to end the game with a significant lead, which is certainly not impossible. Anything can happen on a given slate, and really no one's going to be on him. So I don't hate, I don't hate some Gus Edwards in my lineups. He's a guy who's kind of been efficient every time he gets the ball. It's basically just there's one scenario for him to get in the game, and it's when his team's winning. So I would rank them as I like Dobbins the most, then Ingram and Gus Edwards. It really just does take a very specific scenario. And in that scenario, he probably hits fairly well, but I'm not super big on Gus Edwards. There are guys in that, sub 2K price range I think are just better plays.
All right, guys, we've got 30 minutes left here. I do want to point out that our producer, Jordan Klein, behind the glass, of course, doing his excellent work, has been showing on the screen here. This is what you've been seeing is the captain ownership as well as percentage of chance of being the top scorer for the different sites here. So that's part of the premium product that we have. But again, that's available to you as part of the NFL Express package. If you don't want to go with the full premium or the full NFL packages, you can pick the NFL Weekly Express. It's $3.95 a week, but it gets you all of the Showdown content. And we've bundled that, all of it in there now. So you get the individual player projections, ownership, and then the six. What did I say? The successful 6 and the fabulous 5 over there on DraftKings and FanDuel, respectively. So you'll want to be checking that out. But that's what you've been seeing up on the screen, and that's tonight's numbers. So maybe screenshot it and see what you can do, or just spend the $3.95 and you get it for all of the Showdown slates for the next week. All right, Alex, what have you done with regards to the skill position players here? I'm going to bundle everything together for you. The running backs, they run for this team. The receivers, they block for this team. The tight ends, they share time for this team. What do you want to do with the rest of Baltimore?
Yeah, this one is it's tricky because, aside from Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown, who are good options, it's hard to really feel confident in anyone. But there's some cheap options. So, I'm willing to take some shots on Willie Snead and Miles Boykin, who have been getting decent playing time. So in the first 2 weeks, Snead saw 64% of snaps, Boykin saw 81%, and Devin Duvernay only saw 11%. So he's someone that I'm probably not going to play. Just because I don't expect him to get on the field a ton. But I think Snead and Boykin are decent values. And then Nick Boyle, as Kyle was mentioning, is dirt cheap. He's kind of like a cash play because I feel like he's a little bit too cheap and he's going to get in a lot of optimized lineups. So he could be an ownership fade, which is kind of crazy because I don't think he's got much hype around him.
All right. I'm saving you guys one ad read here, but I need some likes, but I'm going to give you a giveaway. So I'm dropping this link into chat here. This is how you can get a free Awesemo pass for the rest of the season. It's $250 pass that gets you all of the premium content, not just the showdown, but everything, the full kit and caboodle. You go to the pinned tweet over here, which is at Awesemo_COM. If you're just listening, I also just dropped that link into chat. Go over there, answer the question, and then everybody who answers the question will be eligible for a drawing to win said prize. We also have one other giveaway that is over on our Awesemo_com Instagram. Now, I'm not on the gram these days. That's about all I know about Instagram, but it's another way to play. This has the same question, but you can check that out there, and you can enter twice effectively for this contest. Let's see. Justin Tucker. Alex, you worked all day. You got a little bit more time here. Did you figure out in your simulations, and how many simulations have you run? You don't have proprietary, I know. Can a kicker actually in this type of a game be the highest scoring player?
Yeah, I think
it's 2020. The answer is of course.
Here's the thing: is on FanDuel, like there's 250,000 entries for the Millionaire Maker, and how many of them are going to have a kicker, right? So if the odds are better than 1 in like 5,000 or something, maybe you could hustle up some money that way. So not the craziest play in the world. I did find some games where kickers were the highest scorers. Now this game in particular seems like an unlikely one because there's so many good fantasy players. So that I do have some lineups in the millionaire stuff with kicker captain, but I can't give it a full endorsement just because that's ridiculous, right?
Well, I just made my 101st lineup, and it's a Devin Duvernay lineup, so nothing is out of play. Because I reminded myself, it's 2020. Anything is in play at this point. It's a crazy year. All right. Anything you want to mop up here on either of our teams, Kyle? The Ravens defense, I guess, is maybe worth noting, but we know that, I guess San Francisco sort of had Mahomes under control for about a half. What did they get, 3 or 4 sacks in that game? And we know how that game turned out. I just, again, back to from the beginning. On DraftKings, you can lose up to 4 points, which normally I don't let that sway me because it just takes 2.5 combined sacks and turnovers to get you back to positive. I don't know that we're going to get those 2.5 today. I don't even know if it's really in play. It is 2020, but.
Yeah, I will say I don't like absolutely hate Devin Duvernay, and it's for one specific reason, and it's something Alex alluded to, is that Nick Boyle, I think, is just going to be like the jammed in optimizer play. At 800, he's the tight end. He's the second tight end on a team that loves running 2 tight end. They throw to their tight ends in the red zone. So his price point at 800 makes him like an obvious smash play. Duvernay at, I believe, 600 is, I don't know, not a terrible play. 400, excuse me. Duvernay at 400. I think his chances of making the optimal lineup are quite slim, but he does make a good pivot in a similar roster build to Nick Boyle builds, because Nick Boyle lets you do a lot of good things. So does Devin Duvernay. He's got targets in both games. It's like a 4% target share, but that could be enough, especially if, Lamar Jackson drops back 40 to 50 times in a game environment that is absolutely nuts. If you get, 3 targets from him, which is probably close to his ceiling, he actually could enter the optimal lineup. And I think it's specifically because he basically fills the same role as Nick Boyle does for your lineup, but does it with, I would assume, a significantly downgrade in ownership. You're not going to have the same build as everyone else. So again, probably bordering on just essentially that, the Millie type of play. But I do think he is interesting in that he fills the same role as Boyle, but he does it with lower ownership. Boyle, certainly a better points per dollar play, but I'll have a little bit of exposure to Duvernay.
All right. We didn't get to 300 likes, so I got to mention with pleasure, No House Advantage one more time. Just a reminder, they are the sponsor of the show. They help keep us free but also helps keep us free is you guys hitting that like button, subscribing, hitting the notification bell. Any sort of interaction here helps us out with the YouTube algorithm, gets us in front of more eyeballs, which of course allows us to continue putting on shows for free. If you guys like free, definitely hit that like button. If you like free with your first deposit using the promo code Awesemo over there at No House Advantage, if you put in $20, they will match up to $20 for you. They do have an app that is available in the usual mobile device stores. Promo code Awesemo, again, gets you matched up to $20 with your first deposit. And if you refer a friend, as soon as they make a deposit, they'll give you another $5. Who doesn't want to do that? Good times. Good times. All right, Alex, we're going to get into some questions here. We have a fair amount of time. I wanted to make sure we left some since we don't get you on here and we're playing for multi-millions of dollars this evening. The first question they're asking is amongst the dart throws, and Kyle just hit on a couple of them there, but amongst the dart throws, is anything appealing? Do you have a strategy? Is it just sort of I'm going to play 2% of each and let the chips fall where they may? How do you approach something where we have an incredibly top-heavy player pool when it comes to salaries tonight?
I think the play a little bit of everyone approach is probably the best one with the dart throws. And I think there's a lot of decent ones today. We got some of the ones we mentioned, but also I'll throw in some more for if you really want to throw away some money. We got Patrick Ricard, the fullback for Baltimore. He runs routes. I mean, he's running routes on 22% of plays and 2 targets so far. I mean, that's not anything exciting, but I assume he's going to be super, super low owned. Nick Kaiser is the the second tight end for Kansas City. He only played 3% of snaps running routes last week, 26% in week 1 though. So if he gets back to that usage, he could get there. And then I think the Chiefs D and the Ravens D are both going to be low on tonight because, I mean, they're definitely like the opposite of sexy. Like neither team really throws a lot of interceptions. And they're both projected to put up a ton of points. So pretty much the opposite of an optimizer play. But freak plays happen in the NFL, and we need to account for that. So have some defense.
All right. This just came in. I don't know if it's real or not, Alex, but this question is from a Katie Bell. Who is your best play of the night? I knew we're giving this one out like 20 minutes early, but it's Katie Bell.
I mean, I have some love for Katie Bell, so I'll try to give out a good play here. It helps to know the site, but without knowing the site,
it's Katie. Let's give one for each.
I'll say Clyde Edwards-Helaire at captain, just because being a running back gives you that extra chance to be the top scoring player because those rushing touchdowns only count for one player. And I think most people are going to think this game is going to be about a lot of passing, but if Kansas City somehow pulls out a blowout win, maybe having Clyde Edwards-Helaire a captain and maybe even throw in Darrell Williams in the flex could be an interesting game script lineup.
All right, Kyle, we got a question coming in here that they say, what about going with both Jackson and Ingram, not because of their connection, but just hoping this is kind of a ground and pound type game and you're just going to corral all the touchdowns. This would, of course, assume Ingram is going to get at least one, but that isn't that is a specific game scenario build, which I think we really need to look at. And that's where, with the field getting more and more sophisticated, that's the different outcomes we need to cover. How would you approach something like that? Is that a viable opportunity there?
Yeah, it's certainly viable. And I think it's reasonable to say like both of them they could hit in the exact scenario that you mentioned where it probably does, unless we get a Mark Ingram receiving touchdown, which we got 5 of last year. And I will say, although it's reasonable to say he should regress on his touchdown rate, there also is a certain aspect of he has a great quarterback that is impossible to defend. Linebackers are going to focus on Lamar Jackson, leaving Mark Ingram sometimes open for receiving touchdowns, probably still not the rate he did last year. So you really do need rushing touchdowns from both. But because Lamar Jackson can get it done in so many ways, and Mark Ingram really only needs a touchdown and a decent game on the ground to pay off, It is possible that both are, in the optimal lineup. I don't love it, but I certainly don't think it is like a terrible play. And I actually like what Alex is saying about playing Darrell and Clyde, because 2 running backs isn't like, and it's sort of what we're talking about with Lamar Jackson as a running back and Mark Ingram. It hits at a pretty solid rate, but I think it's like a 15 or 20% rate somewhere in there in terms of the winning lineups, maybe it's 10 or 15. But I would imagine people are so incredibly averse to that because it's counterintuitive. But showdown slates are so like random, like touchdowns are so random. The NFL is quite hard to predict. People are overconfident that they know that one running back can make it and the second one can't. So in terms of Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, I'm sort of talking about 2 running backs. And in terms of CEH and Darrell Williams, the same rules apply, where it might not seem optimal in outwardly facing, but in terms of the differentiation it's going to get you, I actually think it's like a pretty sharp play relative to the ownership.
All right. I can't repeat this on air, but like Lamp, you definitely have won chat for the night. You have won. Alex, what are some rookie mistakes that people can make? We're going to be coming into a stretch here where it's mostly going to be NFL. It's going to be a little bit of EPL, a whiff of playoff baseball, which the prize pools aren't going to be very large, it looks like. And then, obviously the NBA finals, which is its own animal. But we're running out of sports here. They're going to bring back some of the esports and things like that, but it's going to be all football all the time. People are getting excited. They may not have played a lot of these showdown sites last year. What are some of the hard-earned lessons that you might be able to pass along here in a short period of time?
So the biggest lesson I would say is that there's no one-size-fits-all lineup. Like some of the lineups tonight in the largest field tournaments are going to be duplicated thousands of times. And they have a great chance of being the highest scoring lineup, but when they do, it doesn't pay off as much as you'd like. So the main thing is like you want to build riskier lineups in the larger field tournaments. In the smaller field tournaments, you want to just stick to the main rules of Showdown, where it's like make sure you got the right correlations in your lineups. Don't fall for like the obvious value plays that are over optimized in the people's lineups, and make sure you got a captain that fits the build of your lineup, because they need to be the highest scoring player in the team. And there are some ways you can build lineups that just really isn't likely. One of them won the other night, where it's like captain of a team versus 5 players from the other team. Like to me, that's not a very smart way to build a lineup, but everything wins once in a while.
We'll call that the Lamar Jackson. Kyle, you've done a lot of the analyzing on the back end here. You put up free articles, as do I, for each of these games that we get, and you've utilized some of the heavy lifting that our friend Nolan Kelly, he likes to be called Spud apparently, but Mr. Potato Head there up in Canada has put up some interesting information for you and others to look at. What do you want to tell those that are kind of new to this about the mathematical probabilities of stuff? We hit a little bit on the 4-1s, the 4-2s, 5-1s, et cetera. What have you kind of sussed out and learned or enhanced in the last 3 weeks where you've really been doing deep dives?
Yeah, so I think that the 1-5 is super funny because, it hit once last year, and my intuition and what we've seen from the data shows that it is so incredibly unlikely. So I'm glad to hear someone like reaffirm that I'm not going crazy thinking that was like an incredibly outlier event. 2-4, not as bad. It doesn't hit particularly often. I don't think people play it very much. I would say something we touched on a bit earlier in the show is that generally, especially on a slate like this, and like the correlation backs up, the winning lineups typically use more salary in games with high totals, and it's quite intuitive that in games with high totals, the good players are going to hit. Whereas in a game where it's a 39 total, Matt Prater could actually just be a great play. He's the one kicker who ended up being the optimal captain. Not that it can't happen. It's not going to happen tonight. You're going to have a lot of Lamar Jackson scoring, a lot of Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill. So in anything but that, like the giant milli maker, which I think is filled at this point. So maybe people have lineups that they're adjusting while they're in there, but you probably can't get any more lineups in. And anything other than that, for the most part, and the same like goes on FanDuel, and anything other than their highest contest, in this game specifically, because we know games with high totals generally correlate to you wanting to use more of your ownership. It's a slight correlation, but it's at least worth pointing out. You should generally be trying to build, like, don't go too off the board. Don't leave, 10,000 on the table or whatever. Still try and build the best lineups. And I do think it's important to, in these, mid to high end tournaments, don't really bite too hard on that optimizer play. I think it's going to be Nick Boyle. Patrick Ricard, as we were talking about, I don't hate that play either. I think in the largest tournaments, leave a little more salary on the table, maybe look for pivots off of that. In the mid and low stakes or in your cash games, I wouldn't go too crazy getting too cute. You still want your quarterbacks in your lineup, which is another thing that correlates with high totals, is you generally want more quarterbacks in those games for the same reasons. They score a lot of points when there's a lot of points on the board. So don't get too crazy. I think it's more important about finding like some contrarian pivots as opposed to like, I'm just going to run 1-5 because no one plays it. Well, there's a reason no one plays it.
All right. Reminder, we are running 2 giveaways here. One on the Awesemo _COM Twitter account, and the other is on the Instagram account. I've dropped both those links there in chat so you can get to them, but you just need to answer the question, will Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes have more passing yards tonight? Everybody who answers that question, notice I didn't say gets it right, anybody who answers that question will be in a drawing for a free annual subscription for Awesemo NFL. You're definitely going to want to check that out. That is a pretty solid deal there. You probably have better odds of winning that than the Millie Maker, I'm going to say. So I was going to ask Alex, has anybody been left out of your player pool? But Kyle reminded me with Richard potentially at least being mentioned, you haven't next to anybody out yet. Is that correct?
Darwin Thompson, someone I'm not playing, who played last week, because I just think he's buried in the depth chart, and he only played because of the injury to Darrell Williams. I did have one other thought occur to me that I want to mention real quick, is that you got to understand the math of Showdown too, which is that we've been talking a lot about 5-1 stacks and whatnot, and that just improves your odds of hitting the perfect lineup, because there are less ways to take 5 players from one team and 1 from another than there are 3 players from one team and 3 from another, just based on the combinations. And so, like, there's a lot of games in the NFL where one team just kind of like gets the majority of the production. So I think that's a really solid strategy that's been proven to work. And on a night like tonight, where everyone wants to get in like Lamar, Mahomes, it could be sneaky that you just fade either Baltimore or Kansas City completely, and you just punt that last play.
Right. If you were looking for player props or anything like that, Alex, do you have a favorite site that you go to?
Well, we have Awesemo or oddshopper.awesemo.com, and that lets you shop the odds. So I recommend that. And I'm working hard on a new props tool to help you guys win these. There are some pretty weak lines out there as far as prop betting, and I've been really trying to hit those. So you can use my projections under the detailed stats. That gives you an idea too. The one I'm hitting hard tonight is Lamar Jackson under 255 passing. I bet that on DraftKings, and I think that he's averaged like 9.5 yards per attempt this year, and last year it was more like 8. And I think 8's more like where it's going to land. And if you add all the math, you need to throw like 35 times to hit 250 or whatever, or 32 times. I just think that Baltimore, they run at one of the highest rates in the league, and Kansas City is going to have the ball a decent amount of the time because they're pretty strong on offense. So I feel like that under 255 is a really good bet.
All right, I'm going to drop this in here. This is the link that takes you right to that page. So we've got on Awesemo Odd Shopper. So here it shows half a dozen different books and their lines. So what this is helpful for is, one, you're shopping the lines. Who's got the best one? What stands out to me? Well, you like that under, but PointsBet's at 247.5. Wow, if they're setting the line there, then everybody else that's sitting at 255 or 251 may be a little bit aggressive over. Those would be what we would consider some of the softer lines. The other thing that you want to do is look and see where's the money coming in. How much do you have to pay to get the under or the over? If it's, but you see this a lot with pitchers. It's like, okay, great, their strikeout prop is 4.5, but I got to pay minus 148 to get the over, and I only got to pay I get an extra 10 if I take the under. Right. So that's how they're balancing this out as well. So while they're not going to move these player prop odds as much, the actual number as much, they'll adjust the odds up and down on the other side of what you're paying. So that's one way they do that. But this is a handy way that you can go in on any players. You can just go type their name in the upper left corner here, and it'll just bring up all of their props. So it's pretty nifty tool. And this is just getting better and better. Every week they're adding new bells and whistles and features. So it's definitely something that you want to check out. I'm in Virginia where it is legal for sports wagering. We just can't do it yet. But I've been having fun playing around with this because I want to be up and running and not have to learn all these hard lessons when my state does make this finally available. We're coming down to the wire here. We've got about 9 minutes to go, and then it's be time for some pizza here. Kyle, make sure we can we get to like 500 likes? I think Jordan Klein is looking for some pizza tonight too. But we're at 440. Come on, we still got 1,500 of you guys in here. Help us out. Kyle, any final thoughts as we wind this down over our last 8 minutes that you want to mention? You've gotten to hear Alex, which has just been fantastic that he's joined us tonight, giving us some insights. This might actually be a show you want to go back and listen to, just because this is a good one to talk about with this high scoring game and appropriate pricing. And it's a different animal than what we see on most Thursday nights, but definitely check that out. What are your final thoughts as we wind up here?
Yeah, like most importantly, I would say let's get to that 500 likes. My girlfriend told me before the show if we didn't get there, she wouldn't speak to me the rest of the night. I really do, appreciate her company, but it's hard when she doesn't talk to me. So 500 likes, guys. I really need that 500 likes, man. So that would be great. In terms of the showdown slate, which I guess is important to talk about as well. Yeah, I would just pair it that if you're looking at I'm not looking at 1-5 lineups. If you're looking at 5-1 lineups, it really does pare down just how many wrong answers there are. Essentially, there are only so many wrong answers at 5-1. If that is the winning strategy. The data last year showed that it hit at a decent enough rate relative to really nobody playing it. And this would be the perfect slate for it to be particularly contrary, because everybody wants, I want to get Marquise Brown and Lamar Jackson in my lineup, but then also get Clyde Edwards-Helaire and all those guys in my lineup. But there's no guarantee that that's how it pans out. Both of these teams are capable of just putting up points in droves, and both of them have very quality defenses. I know Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson largely don't care about defenses, but anything can happen on a showdown slate. I think the most important thing is to leverage the fact that people think they know, are always overconfident in what they believe can happen, whereas it's such a largely random game that essentially anything can happen, except 1-5. 1-5 isn't happening tonight, I'll tell you that much. Not playing it.
All right, Alex, we're seeing over here on DraftKings, they're running this Monday night special, and they're creating more contests. They're saying if this game goes over 75, that they will refund all the entry fees, meaning you are playing for free. What is the likelihood of that happening? Is that like a 1 in 10 outcome, a 1 in 15?
That's a great question. I mean, I don't have the answer, unfortunately, but so 75, that would be like a 40-35 game. I'd say is probably pretty darn unlikely. But hey, we don't usually get that, so I wouldn't mind some free refunds. I mean, that can't hurt.
All right, and then we got a nice. Let me scroll up. A little super chat here from Anthony Davis. Oh, that was his super chat. So I do want to call that out for that one. Thank you, Anthony. Good luck in the next round. We're rooting for you here at Awesemo. And hat tip to Nolan Kelly. I know I was making fun of him before, but he does a lot of hard work behind the scenes that you guys are not aware of with scheduling and such, and finding our talented contributors. That works a lot. But don't tell him I said that. Let me see here. So we got 5 minutes to go. Who will have the most fantasy points? Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Travis Kelce, or Tyreek Hill? Let's go full PPR. Alex, we'll go with you.
Man, I wish I knew the answer to that. But okay.
What's the optimal lineup? Could you just spit it out real quick?
Yeah. Katie Bell has followed you back. You're sliding into the DMs. What would you say?
I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That was one of the options, right? I think maybe it's a little bit more contrarian because the game script might set up more likely Kansas City to throw. But I think he's a great play tonight and somewhat game script proof. So I think he's going to be a really good fantasy player this year.
All right. We got 5 minutes to go here. Let's see if we can get any more questions in and still get it. Kyle, this one's for you. Marquise Hollywood Brown or Mark Andrews, if you have to pick one?
I'm going to go with Hollywood Brown. His air yard share is crazy, and he hasn't seen like a crazy amount of targets. I think it's been like 5 or 6 each week, but also the Ravens have thrown 25 and 24 passes. So it's not like they've really had a chance to air it out a ton, or they at least haven't had to. So I'll go with Hollywood Brown. I think his upside on a per target basis is higher, and he's not seeing like bad target, like literal target numbers either. So I'll take him. Although I do love as maybe like a pivot off him or just like an individual play. I think Miles Boykin is like clearly the number 2 receiver on like for one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL. And now that quarterback is actually going to have to try tonight as opposed to like RG3 getting in. Probably. Maybe RG3 gets in tonight. Doesn't seem likely. So one other thing I guess is worth bringing up, but we haven't talked about it a ton, is I thought it was interesting. You started off the show saying that this would be, you compared it basically to that Rams Kansas City game. Was that not a game where there were 3 defensive touchdowns? Was that the one?
Yes, I believe Kansas City had 2, if I remember.
Kansas City had 2 and the Rams had 1, which is just another way of saying that, yes, like the defenses aren't like, they don't seem like good plays, but it's so random. If they're going to come in with no ownership, and the Chiefs defense is super cheap, by the way, too. If they're going to come in with like so low ownership, especially in the very large field tournaments, like anything can happen. And these higher game totals, although they're going to feature more points, it also does give them a few more cracks at the, at the slot machine of sacks, fumbles, interceptions, et cetera, that you kind of need a touchdown for.
All right. Another super chat here. Robert Gautier has said, we've got 1,500 people in here. Let's get to 600 likes. We love these guys and appreciate the free streams. Thank you.
Top 5? Did we top 5?
We topped 5.
Oh, thank God, my girlfriend talked to me.
We're going to hey, let's get it. What's your girlfriend's name? We just got another super chat. Get to 600 and Kyle sits by himself on the couch tonight. There we go. That's like that's a winning proposition, right? It is Thursday Night Football here. All right, guys, if you haven't uploaded your files or your contest, you have 2.5 minutes left. Definitely want to do that. We've all been on the unfortunate end of having upload incidences here. Don't let that happen to you. By the time you guys are hearing this, not too much actionable information can be imparted. Oh, wait, there's second half contests. Kyle, have you looked at anything with the numbers and strategies yet? This is coming. I don't know. Is there anything behind the scenes? What the heck do we do with second half and even fourth quarter contests? I kind of get it for basketball because there's so many alternating possessions. In football, depending on the game flow and who has the ball and when and what kind of a drive they're probably on, you could end up not having a team take the field or take it more than once, I guess would be a better way of saying it, in a fourth quarter contest. Have you dabbled with those at all?
Yeah, so I haven't written about it anywhere because it's not a contest a ton of people play, but I do play it myself. Not only is it, I do think there are literally scenarios where you can expect a team to have nearly double the amount of drives that another team will have. And there are also injuries that can play in. And these are things that I think people who are just watching the game, eating potato chips on their couch might not see, that the second running back might not have seen last week, that Darrell Williams went out and Darwin Thompson projected to get a few carries. Those are edges that I think are actually quite strong in the second and fourth quarter slate. So I haven't crunched any numbers on it, but anecdotally, they actually have been a pretty solid edge. And you can also, if you're having a really good slate, you could hedge out of a doomsday scenario where someone gets hurt or something. So you could both use them as just a hedge, or I actually just think they're kind of soft relative to it's just so anecdotal. We're just watching the game actually and being aware of what is going on can be such an edge.
All right, that is going to bring us up to lock here. We're going to look at the little the new one-stop shop. That's how I look it up. We'll see what we got. Shows tomorrow. So there is baseball tomorrow. There are 4 games. And then Wednesday and Thursday, each day, there will be 8 games. They're kind of spread out a little bit throughout the day. So it'll be interesting to see how the contests break down. But we will have shows. We're assuming this first day is kind of going to have 1 lock time, it looks like. So we will do a strategy show, and then we'll do something else right before lock, I think is what we're looking at doing. And then depending on how their contests are broken out over Wednesday and Thursday, we're guessing they might do two-phase contests, but we'll go live before lock for both of those. Plus, we still have live before lock NBA. We've got the finals starting here. LeBron, for the 9th time in 10 years, in his 3rd decade, Udonis Haslem, and then Dion Waiters has played for both teams this year. Apparently, he has guaranteed himself a ring. Alex, that is a savvy play. Do you wish you had the foresight of Dion Waiters?
Yeah, especially, I mean, didn't he like get kicked off the team because he ate like a weed brownie or something? I mean, that like what a year for Dion Waiters. That's epic.
Only in 2020. Only in 2020. All right. With that, hopefully Byron Pringle only scores if you have him in your captain spot. If you don't, then I hope he doesn't. And then Pringle's favorite flavor for me, it's probably got to be pizza. So with that, gamers, we're going to dip on out of her. You can follow Kyle on Twitter at Kyle Tweets Here. You can follow Alex at Awesemo DFS, not to be confused with the Awesemo Twitter handle, Awesemo_COM. And I, of course, am at EMac DFS. With that, gamers, good luck.